Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you live from the WELT studios and the Allen County Public Library here in Fort Wayne, Indiana on this Thursday morning, October 10th. And we have a new race to discuss. We have a driver moving up to a new team. We have testing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is actually ongoing as we record.
Testing.
1, 2, 3. All that said, hi, Justin. Hello. How are we?
We're doing well. How about you, sir?
Doing well. I mean, tired, but that's to be expected with a newborn.
Yes, it's never just seems to end, the tiredness. You almost quickly forget how it was before having kids. Even we were talking about that, the wife and I, yesterday, because our son Noah, he said, I can't remember without having a brother. And the wife and I were okay. We can remember when neither one of you were around, but it seems like a long time ago, which it is, 14 years with Noah. But yeah, you are in the thick of little sleep and lots of feeding and falling asleep and passing out on couches and chairs and wherever you can crash. So hopefully you can stay awake for the podcast here.
Yeah, I should be good for today. I'm not too worried about that.
Well,
I'm getting enough to get by.
Well, you and the wife have a system, which
we do.
Is always important. And sometimes the system goes smoothly, and sometimes the infant doesn't cooperate.
Yeah, that's not up to me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive in IndyCar in what I would call, an absolute home run, touchdown, whatever
all the
other
things.
Sports thing you want to throw out there. Officially announced the Grand Prix of Arlington for 2026, IndyCar partnering with the city of Arlington, with the Dallas Cowboys, with the Texas Rangers, and also Rev Entertainment, which is essentially the marketing firm for the Texas Rangers. This is an absolute smashing success already in my book. You get two well-known franchises, the Rangers, of course, coming off a World Series win last year, right? And the Dallas Cowboys, well-known in the U.S., most valuable NFL franchise, one of the most valuable sports franchises, period. They haven't won a Super Bowl in forever, but they lead the way in ratings and attention. They have fans all over the world. This is huge for IndyCar to link themselves with those franchises and organizations. You throw in Jerry Jones, the well-known owner of the Dallas Cowboys, on top of that, and everything is there for this event to be a raging success.
And we had talked about Dallas/Arlington, Fort Worth area being a target for IndyCar before, and we didn't get as excited as I think you and I are now because of the involvement of Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys and the Texas Rangers, and just the already incredible marketing that we're seeing with the hype video with Michael Irvin in it. With people that don't know, Hall of Fame wide receiver for Dallas. The last time, was he on the team the last time they won a Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Michael Irvin?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's been forever for Dallas. But, and the circuit looks cool. I mean, the renderings and just going around the entire complex, the pit lane that basically cuts through the middle of the complex.
And double-sided like
Detroit. And it has quickly, in my mind, become, if this can be delivered, and granted it is still a ways away, March of 2026, is going to be a new crown jewel for this series. Just because of the momentum that this event already has. We've seen from Jenna Fryer, the AP, Fox is going to mention it this weekend. Now, whether it's just a quick graphic or whatever, the fact of the matter is they're going to market on Fox this weekend during the NFL slate a race that's coming up in March of 2026 that they're going to mention it. It's just astounding. So just a credit to IndyCar and the people that be around Arlington to make this happen. You and I are very excited about this event coming March 2026.
So the circuit itself, 2.73 miles, which will make it the longest street course on the schedule and one of the longest that IndyCar has run. I believe Surfers is longer, and one other, I think this is just shorter than the Sao Paulo layout, if I'm not mistaken. 14 turns, 2.73 miles. they had said greater than 180 miles an hour on the straight, which is what, 9/10 of a mile. And Newgarden and Palou were like, no, we could be approaching 200 on that straight. They were there for the announcement as well. Some cool photo ops with them. In fact, there's a photo I saw of Palou in Cowboys Stadium.
Oh,
it's
really
cool of him just kind of like standing and kind of looking up. But this is a great event. The hype videos you mentioned that Michael Irvin, I mean, that's outstanding. Having the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers to promote this, you won't have the Rangers, the season of, but you'll have them the entire next season to be able to promote this. And just think about this. All the fans who bought tickets, season ticket holders, people who bought tickets for the Cowboys and Rangers, they're basically in the database as far as getting information about this event. So
huge.
To me, that's huge.
And Jerry Jones made it a point to say, hey, 1,000 of our season ticket holders for the Dallas Cowboys come from south of the border in Mexico.
Yeah, from Monterrey, right?
Yeah, so he's like, we're already going to tap into that market to get some Mexican nationals up to the race. And we'll talk about a little bit more about Mexico later. But if IndyCar can pull this off, and I know it's a big if, but I feel much more comfortable with where we're at in terms of who's backing this event. Right? It's not a local promoter. It's not even IndyCar trying to come in and self-promote. It is two world-class organizations, sports organizations, and one of the best promoters of his team ever in Jerry Jones. I mean, they haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 years, yet we know how popular the Dallas Cowboys are, and that goes largely to Jerry Jones. So just a very, very exciting announcement and event, and if it lives up to even half of what they're selling, it will be a tremendous event for IndyCar.
And just the promotion aspect we've talked about, the track itself, it kind of reminds me of the Miami F1 circuit, just in the layout, obviously around some sports stadiums. This does not look like a parking lot setup, which was the fear when we kind of had seen that this event had been leaked as far as some details. And that is not the vibe I'm getting here.
And yeah, people get nightmares of Houston and stuff like that. But we said it last week. I mean, this is when this started trickling out, this was going to be an envisioning of Jerry Jones looking at Hard Rock Stadium and what they've done with the ownership group there in putting together the Miami track. Is now that it's going to be open full time, could this be something that in a couple years is a full time year round venue for other races? And Jerry Jones doesn't shy away from a challenge. Sometimes he is misguided, particularly with his football franchise, but I think this is far from misguided. I think he's seen what the benefit has been for Miami and around Hard Rock Stadium. And he says, I want to capitalize that around our facility and the complex we have here. So it's going to be huge. Double-sided pit lane, as you mentioned. We have the horseshoe-like carousel, turn 6, I think it is. A couple hospitality and suites that go over the track. So this is very exciting. I can't wait to get to March of 2026 and where this exactly fits in the schedule and how the early season schedule for IndyCar looks in 2026. We'll get to that a little bit later in the podcast.
Bill Miller, who's got a lot of experience in the motorsports industry, previously served in the role of president at California Speedway, SVP of operations at SEMA, which is they do a lot in the automotive aftermarket. I've heard of them. He is going to be the events president, so you have someone experienced on that. Also, the fact that Jerry Jones basically said, yeah, when Roger called to put this event on, he was all in. Like that shows you the cachet that Roger Penske has.
It's a great point. That's kind of what my next point too is going to be, is for people that criticize Roger Penske for some things, and we do too. You have to give Roger Penske credit. Let's say hypothetically Liberty Media owns IndyCar. Would Jerry Jones be as excited to jump into the deep end with Liberty Media as he obviously is with Roger Penske for this event? I don't think so.
No.
So this is where Roger Penske and his cachet is benefiting the series. And I know there are things that for some people, they hold Roger Penske accountable negatively, but you have to give credit where credit is due. His contacts, his relationships over decades of being a businessman have continuously paid dividends for himself and the series on occasion. And this is a prime example.
And I think the other thing is I saw some people say after the announcement, which they had at Texas Live, which is kind of like an entertainment venue, that whole Arlington complex, which we talked about before, there's a lot going on there. I mean, you have multiple sports stadiums, you have Six Flags over Texas. It's basically an entertainment destination that's smack dab in the middle between Dallas and Fort Worth. And people said there was buzz for that announcement they hadn't seen for IndyCar races basically ever, which is awesome. It says a lot.
Because you can think, well, okay, Cowboys are out of season in March. The Rangers haven't started yet, but you're adjacent to an amusement park. So what's better to sell to your kids for families? Hey, family of four is going to go to Arlington for the race. Saturday, we're going to go to the amusement park. Sunday, you go to the race. Make it a Friday through Sunday. Dad's going to go Friday to practice, IndyCar practice, whatever. Saturday would have the music. It's around a venue that is very conducive to families with a lot of stuff to do. And I'm sure this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure they'll have a ton of other stuff going on around the complex for race weekend. This is going to be huge. I mean, we always have doubts when Mark Miles opens his mouth and says about stuff about transformative events, and we kind of roll our eyes and we're okay, show us. He showed us. IndyCar has shown us. This is, and in terms of being able to execute this race, I am more confident in this than any other really new race, particularly a road or street course, in the last decade because of who is leading the charge.
This tops Nashville street circuit.
Yeah.
And even tops the racing down Broadway element that they were trying to do. I mean, this is bigger, which it says a lot because that was a big get for IndyCar to have a street circuit in downtown Nashville.
And hopefully they can at some point go down Broadway. They may have to dodge goalposts while going down Broadway after Vanderbilt's win last week against Alabama. Look that up if you haven't seen it, goalposts going down Broadway. But easily overshadows Baltimore and stuff like that, even going further into the past. So just very exciting and really gives IndyCar another marquee event that no other series has. And we've been openly critical about, look at F1 doing Miami and Vegas and NASCAR doing even the LA Coliseum with the Clash and Chicago, of course, with the street race, trying new things. And while we knew IndyCar couldn't self-finance things like that, like F1 and like NASCAR can, if they found the right relationship, they could pull it off, and they definitely have with Jerry Jones.
And is some of it just the fact that, well, IndyCar's had two marquee events for so many years, with the Indy 500 obviously in Long Beach, that you almost take for granted that you already have two marquee events on the schedule, and then you throw in Road America and Barber in Mid-Ohio, and you have three very well-attended, established events on road courses. So it's almost like IndyCar's a victim, dare I say, of their own success, having two marquee events and then three others that are on extremely solid footing year after year, that you kind of take for granted what you already have.
Right.
In IndyCar, I mean, a street circuit in the LA market and the Indy 500, which speaks for itself. I mean, those are marquee events, and this will join that list.
And not just a new race in a new market, but at a key part of the schedule.
Yes.
Which is huge. Because you could add a Northeast race, which hopefully at some point we get. You can add a West Coast race, which hopefully we get, and some intel on that coming up. But you're limited on when you can have those based on weather. Arlington, Texas is perfectly warm enough in March to hold this event. And so hopefully,
as long as it's late March, which I think it will be.
Yes. And we'll get kind of to, I put together a rudimentary, what I feel would be a potential schedule for 2026 here in a little bit, but it fits one of those holes. After St. Pete, it seems like IndyCar is always scrambling where do they put now? That's why Thermal is in there in late March for next year, is because IndyCar doesn't have anything else. Well, all of a sudden, they have a race to put in March. Could they have 2 races to put in March? Looking at Mexico. So that can really, really shore up a deficiency for quite a while early in the season when you're void after your first race largely for an entire month before you're on. I mean, we've had, 6 weeks sometimes between races, between race 1 and 2. I mean,
yes.
Definitely 5 weeks. And I know Thermal's in there kind of as a placeholder, but this is huge. Not just what we have with this event, but where it's going to be on the schedule.
And Penske's relationship in a good article by Jenna Fryer, the AP, goes back to Detroit's Super Bowl bid way back in 2006 and basically gave Jerry Jones the blueprint for Dallas to host the Super Bowl. Of course, unfortunately, they had an ice storm when they hosted their first Super Bowl in 2011. But that just goes to show you that relationships matter, right? We all know this and networking and all that, but that's a prime example of that. And you look at this event, it's a home run, and I guess now we're already getting answers on the schedule, so I guess let's kind of dive into the other part of news that came out, and that's that there continues to be positive momentum for IndyCar to add a race in Mexico. Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal, Mark Miles telling him talks to add quite far along. 2026 also the aim. That would likely be an early April date is what I presume. So you could have St. Pete a week or 2 off. You could have Arlington. You could have Mexico City or wherever in Mexico. Then you have Long Beach. I mean, that's a great start to the season.
And if Thermal would stay on the schedule, I mean, maybe it goes off once you add some of these other races, but that's always another additional race you could have. So all of a sudden you're looking pretty healthy in March and April if these 2 races, or we already know one's coming to fruition, if we can also get Mexico. Now, in terms of where this would be, is that kind of been talked about, or where are we at with that?
Not really been talked about. I mean, I would think Mexico City would be the focus. It doesn't have to be there. They could run it in Monterey. There are other places.
I mean, would it be at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez? Is that what we're thinking?
I would assume. Because Miles even said people know that we're in discussions that are quite far along to be racing in Mexico City. So I would assume that's...
Yeah, I mean, they're not doing a street race in Mexico City. I mean, to shut down roads in Mexico City is impossible. What is it, like 12 million people live in Mexico City, something like that?
Like, I thought it was like 20.
Is it really?
It's massive.
It's not. That's not happening. But you look at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, which is where Cup is going, right?
Yes.
In 2025,
okay.
Yes.
The population, let's see here, of Mexico City is 9.2 million. The metro, though, is nearly 22 million.
Yeah, so if we're talking metro, it's humongous.
Yeah.
In Mexico City. There's no street race going on in Mexico City, okay? So we're looking at probably Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez or Monterey.
I think those are your best options. As far as other races,
which
Miles...
is what Autodromo Monterey, right?
No, it'd be Fundadora Park, I believe, because it's a street circuit that they basically converted when they ran there in Champ Car in the past. Miles also had this to say, and this is interesting. I think we can decipher it, though. He said, we're not quite as far along, but in discussions I think can be fruitful for a new city for us in the western half of the United States. Denver?
That's my bet.
That's my guess. My number 2 would be Salt Lake City, but I'd say Denver because that's the HQ for Aero Electronics,
which
obviously
is a very
major sponsor.
Apt observation by you, I must say.
And also, you look at Arlington. I mean, NTT Data is based in the Metroplex, so could they be a sponsor? Could AT&T, which sponsors Cowboys Stadium, be a sponsor?
Right.
To compete with Verizon. There's all kinds of opportunities, and those are big markets. And then the other thing that Miles had to say is we're not yet in real dialogue in the northeast of the U.S., but that is something we hope to develop and we'll turn to before long. So, I mean, maybe it gets on the 2026 schedule, but you're probably already looking at 2027 because these things take time to figure out. That's the one gaping thing. Yes, You have a race once again in Texas and specifically the DFW market. Yes, you're looking to add a street race, we think, in Denver. Yes, you're closing in on discussions for a race in Mexico and likely Mexico City, but you need a race on the East Coast.
You do, but let's just bask in what IndyCar is doing here. I know we needed one on the East Coast, but they have locked in Arlington. They're close to locking in a Mexico race, which is people been clamoring for, and they're not as close, but well on their way to adding an event in Denver, is where we think.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lot of new events to get going in a short amount of time. And I get it that, yes, the Northeast particularly is void, but let's give IndyCar the benefit of the doubt here. They're checking off one at a time in pretty quick fashion. I mean, usually you take, once every 4 years you would have a new event of this magnitude, and IndyCar seemingly working on 3 in terms of Arlington, Mexico, and Denver. So I'm fine with being patient with the Northeast race, because they're doing a lot of good things elsewhere in a reasonably short amount of time.
Yes, and also this means we're going to eliminate doubleheaders, which I'm all for.
Correct.
This means to me that we're not going to see thermal on the schedule in 2026, which
maybe
I'm for, in the sense that it's just not fan accessible. I like it as a test. I like it as an exhibition.
Right.
It's not suitable for fans in terms of having a large crowd.
Right. Do you want to go through my hypothetical?
Yes,
okay.
Let's do it.
So let's go. This is my hypothetical 2026 schedule. This is counting Arlington, obviously, counting Mexico, and also, just for grins and giggles, counting Denver. Okay? So March, your 3 races would be St. Pete, Arlington, Thermal. Let's say contingent on going to the Thermal still. April has 2 races, Mexico and Long Beach. May, you have Barber, the GP, and the 500.
Okay.
June, you go Detroit, Gateway, Road America.
Okay.
July is full. You go Mid-Ohio, Iowa, Toronto, Denver. August, you go Laguna Seca, Portland, Milwaukee. You end the season on Labor Day weekend in Nashville.
How many races is that?
That is 19 races.
Okay, and no doubleheaders?
No doubleheaders. So Iowa is 1 race, Milwaukee is 1 race.
I would say you probably don't see thermal on there.
But I would say if Denver's on there, maybe thermal goes away. If thermal's on there, then maybe Denver isn't on there.
Okay.
Maybe one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all for IndyCar having 20 races.
I just don't know if the series is ready for that.
Yeah, and the teams have always said they're not really ready.
Right. The schedule I gave you is 19 races. So if we say Denver or thermal, that puts you at 18.
18. I could see that, especially because you're getting the sponsor support by going to big markets. You go to Denver, hypothetically, or not.
Correct.
You go back to the Metroplex. It's a big market for a lot of sponsors. You add Mexico and likely Mexico City, which is going to sell tickets, and hopefully you get a huge fee. I mean, I would love a second race in Canada. I don't know where you do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe later on this decade we can get back to second race in Canada.
I mean, to me, my ideal is 3 races in Canada. Toronto, 1 on the east, 1 on the west. You
Vancouver.
Vancouver would be great. Not that they can return to the circuit.
Right.
It was there. It's basically destroyed due to the Olympics and just what they had to rebuild and redo there. I like it. I think that's pretty realistic. You're always going to have events come and go. So, what's the event besides thermal on the schedule you feel like they could drop off?
Well, that's the problem is, it's not a problem. It's a good thing. Is who would potentially drop off right now?
Because you're eliminating doubleheaders. I think IndyCar ultimately has that goal.
Correct. And you're also 18 races. Let's say it's 18, thermal or Denver, in 17 different markets. I mean, just a few short years ago, we had 3 races in Indy.
Mm-hmm.
You had 2 in Iowa. Now we had 2 in Milwaukee. I mean, yeah, you got to 17 races, but you're only in 12 or 13 markets. This is 18 races and 17 markets.
Is there come a point where they drop the road course race at IMS?
Maybe. I think if it gets heavy enough early on, maybe they do. I think IndyCar likes it as being that intro to the month, but how beneficial is it really to the teams as opposed to just getting there a week early and getting all your ducks in a row ready for practice to start? Maybe that means they can then start practice on Monday, please, of qualifying week, which would be great. Maybe.
The 2 events I'm concerned about, and this is pretty much every year, one being Portland. I highly doubt we're seeing BitNile.com come back as a title sponsor of that event.
That was the first time they had a title sponsor.
They were the year prior, I think, as well. And then the other event I'm concerned about, just due to the changes, is Nashville. What is that event like? Obviously, they're going to be on the Oval again next year. What does that event look like, though, long term? And are they able to draw crowds, whether it's on the Oval or on a street course in downtown Nashville?
No worries about Laguna Seca?
As long as Laguna Seca wants to be on the schedule, I think they will be there. Now, moving the date around, not ideal. But it seemed like the crowd was decent this year, but they're moving it around again. Right? So that makes it concerning.
I think looking at this potential 2026 schedule is as strong as we've seen in a decade. Maybe longer?
I'm trying to think of the last time we felt this good about a schedule.
Because not only is it more races, it's more markets. I think that's huge. Is
in good markets.
Correct. You're getting into Denver and Arlington and Nashville and
Mexico
City and your normals, your Long Beach and St. Pete and all that stuff. You're getting outside your breadbasket of the Midwest, and isn't that always been the focus is growing outside of the footprint where half of your races were in the Midwest, and this definitely does that. So in a perfect world, Iowa doesn't have 2 races. I know they have mega concert acts, but you can easily just do one day and have 2 concerts. That would save Hy-Vee a lot of money.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Bobby Rahal made it already sound like they were kind of scaling back a little with the Iowa event. So
correct. So
we'll
if you
see
can
what
go
that means.
To one race, and then of course Milwaukee only needs to be 1 race as well. So we'll see. Plenty of things can happen. You never know. But I haven't felt this positive about a schedule in a long, long time.
Imagine saying all this a month ago.
I mean,
or not even a month ago, like 6 weeks ago. Basically, coming out of Milwaukee or going into Milwaukee when we were worried about ticket sales, and that ended up being a lot better of an event than we anticipated.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing what a couple weeks or a month or 2 months can do for you in terms of momentum. But I think it bodes well. As I said, we were skeptical. We're always skeptical when Mark Miles says something, but when he sold transformative events coming, and we kind of scoffed and said, "Yeah, show us." At least with Arlington, they have showed us, haven't they? And hopefully, Mexico's not far behind.
Yes, and again, that blockbuster event that Mark Miles said for a new city in the western half of the U.S., that is, if it's Denver, I mean, that is huge, and also confirms that Aero's not going anywhere, which we already expect that to be the case.
In terms of Aero and Denver, which you said is the HQ of Aero, when you look at that circuit, and the last time they raced there was 2006. I think AJ Allmendinger won that race. How did that circuit race, and is it possible to run that same circuit? I don't know, because it was kind of around the Capitol, wasn't it? Like the Capitol building?
I don't recall the circuit, to be honest.
It was around the Civic Center, which is kind of the artsy part of town, I think. Government and cultural buildings is kind of around where it is. I don't know if that'd be possible again. Do you look towards Coors Field area? I don't think you do where the football stadium is, Mile High. Coors Field is a little bit more centrally located in town. They have a ballpark district. Maybe that's something they target. I don't know. I just am kind of throwing stuff out there in terms of what that could potentially look like in Denver.
Yeah, and Denver, to me, would be the blockbuster that would meet the criteria, I guess, for me.
That's the only one that makes sense, because he didn't say West Coast. He said the western half of the United States. And if we look at that and say, okay, what are the potential destinations west of the Mississippi? There's not much until you get to Denver, really. Been to Phoenix. That didn't work. F1's got Vegas locked down. You're already in Portland. California doesn't need another race. So feels like Denver's that safe bet on what he's talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ball Arena, which is where the Nuggets play, and also the Avalanche, there's a lot of parking lots around. I know people hate parking lot circuits, but that is downtown and would have the space to do so if that's what they'd want to do. You'd have to compete, though, with light rail, which is always the issue in train tracks. And that was an issue previously in Denver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. You would have, maybe that's why the old circuit wouldn't work, because you were dealing with railroad tracks.
But all in all, this is a lot of positive momentum.
It came out of nowhere.
Yes. It really, and to be fair, IndyCar was saying, hey, we're working on stuff, and people were getting impatient, rightfully so, because there was seemingly no progress. And suddenly we have a new event announced, and it sounds like good progress on Mexico, in particular Mexico City, and a potential street race in Denver. So all in all, good news. Also, in other good news in the last week, Lewis Foster is going to Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. So the driver who won the series formerly known as Indy Lights moves up, multi-year deal, full-time with Rahal. This, to me, was a surprise, and I think a good surprise at that.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime the ladder system works, I know we're technically not calling it that, but we also call it Indy Lights still, so whatever, it worked. Louis Foster wins the Indy Lights Championship, has a scholarship in hand. Best case scenario, he lands a full-time ride somewhere, but at the very least, he gets a handful of races in the 2025 season. He lands a full-time ride, which is another example of the system working, right? In terms of your Indy Lights champion would hopefully, in a perfect world, get a full-time ride the next season. And that has come to fruition at RLL for Louis Foster.
And car number to be announced, sponsors to be announced, obviously brings nearly $1 million in scholarship money for winning that. He also has his own sponsors. So I think this is a home run for that organization, signing a guy who can, be a young up-and-coming talent. As far as testing, he has a test plane at Thermal on November 19th, which I believe is the same day as Logan Sargent. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Who's testing with Meyer Shank Racing. So they're going to get him in the car pretty quickly. And this is good. It's always good when you see guys move up. And I think for me, this is a lot better than I think some of the alternatives. Now I'm curious who's going to be in that third entry. And could it be Linus Lundqvist? He's still under contract as far as we know with Chip Ganassi Racing. Is he out on loan? Kind of like some people have speculated that Louis Foster's out on loan from Andretti to drive an IndyCar for a couple years. I don't know if that's the case, because I don't think you'd loan someone out for 2 years, right? So I don't think so. But could Linus Lundqvist go on loan? You look at the possibilities. You have Lundqvist, you have Rinus VeeKay, you have Stingray Robb, you have Pietro Fittipaldi. Felipe Drugovich is tested in IndyCar. Could he be an option? Logan Sargent, could he be an option? There are a lot of people at play here. What do you expect for that third seat?
There's a lot of options. To me, honestly, I would hope it's a veteran.
Oh, and Yuri Vips. I forgot about him.
I think Yuri Vips has been the good soldier for them in terms of having an opportunity. I just don't know how long Yuri Vips just wants to have this ride dangled in front of him and going, maybe it's going to be you. Maybe
to me, if he was going to have a ride, they would have already announced it. Is how I look at it.
But how impatient does he get? Kind of waiting. But I would like it to be. Here's my issue with ROL, and the sign of Louis Foster shows me unless they surprise me and sign a veteran proven driver for that other seat, of which there are a few out there in terms of proven guys, is Graham Rahal still your number one driver? And I just don't think he's a one. I mean, Christian Lundgaard was racing for that team. He won a race. I felt like he was the better performer in that team. It's always going to be revolved around Graham because his dad is in charge. I get it. But at the same time, if Graham is your alpha, you're still not going to be very competitive, in my opinion. I mean, that's just the way it is. And that's where Graham Rahal is in his career right now. I know ROL behind the scenes isn't very strong, but Graham doesn't do himself any favors, in my opinion. Now you have a veteran in Graham and a rookie in Louis Foster. I would hope they get a veteran proven guy for that seat to maybe challenge Graham, but I just don't know if that's in the cards.
To me, you look at the available options. Sargent, obviously talented, can bring you some funding, a fresh start, but not driven in IndyCar. All he's had is a seat fitting and will have had a test here a month from now. Yuri Vips has run a few races. He's not bringing really any funding. They like him. He does a lot of behind-the-scenes work, but I guess why haven't you chosen him? I know it comes down to money, as it always does, but I'm just surprised they haven't announced him and said, oh, we'll make it work, because that's essentially what they did with Louis Foster, right?
Right.
And then Rinus VeeKay, to me, would elevate the team as far as their oval prowess and help at Indy. Linus Lundqvist, I think, would be another young, talented driver where you'd have a talented rookie, a talented, essentially second-year guy, and a veteran all kind of pushing each other. And I'd feel the same way with VeeKay. So to me, Lundqvist or VeeKay are the best options. I don't know what route they're going to go. And then Stingray Robb, who is testing with Dale Coyne Racing at IMS tomorrow, Friday, as we record this on Thursday, I would guess that's probably the route he's going back to if he's already testing for them.
Could be probably is contingent on how much sponsorship money RLL has. They're still kind of waiting out Hy-Vee's plans and what they want to do, because the two best candidates that you mentioned, Lundqvist and VeeKay, neither bring a lot of money. So in a perfect world, RLL has the funding to sign one of those guys and not worry about having to bring a lot of money to the table. But if they don't secure sponsorship or as much sponsorship as they need, they could have to go with someone that brings a bigger budget, that may be an inferior driver than those two, but brings more money.
And then Pietro Fittipaldi, who hung on for a leader circle spot. A team seems to like him. Has sponsorship.
Energy.
Where they were just supposed to be Indy and Detroit, and they expanded because they liked working with him.
Right.
That relationship grew. He has some of his own personal sponsors, but we're not talking like a full season, but maybe a partial. But they have a lot to figure out. And the way Bobby was talking in a Racer article about, who could join the team, sponsorship's going to be key. That's the main thing. And what happens with Hy-Vee? Do they move over to David Malukas? That's a rumor. They lose Hy-Vee, and Rahal said of signing an extension with Hy-Vee, I'm hopeful. Also added that Hy-Vee's cutting back on a lot of their sports properties, even the Iowa event to some extent, which we mentioned. So that's something else to keep in mind. But a lot at play here. To me, your best options are Lundqvist or VeeKay. I expect them, though, to keep Fittipaldi.
Do you? Just
that's my hunch.
He brings? And my thing is, too, is Hy-Vee has invested so much in this series over the last couple years. You can't afford to lose Hy-Vee for numerous reasons. Of course, Iowa being first and foremost, and to a certain extent, Milwaukee as well, right? So if Hy-Vee is looking at it and says, well, we need to get more bang for our buck, like, I don't know, maybe supporting a team that wins races, I have no problem with Hy-Vee jumping ship and going to another team, because, quite frankly, RLL isn't getting done on track. And if the cost of keeping Hy-Vee in the series is leaving RLL, I got no problem with it. It's business. And Rahal is not giving Hy-Vee what it needs or wants in terms of exposure, because they're hardly ever in the picture at the front of the grid. And maybe the most exposure they get is having to make run after run after run at Indy to try to qualify. So if RLL's loss is the series' gain, and Hy-Vee say we're going to a more better performing team so we can get more on our ROI, don't blame him in the least.
Yeah, I think that's just where we're at. you gotta get results.
Yeah,
and they had great sponsorship for a couple years, and now they didn't get results, and now they need a rebound. And well, you think about it though. I mean, they were good in 2019. They won the Indy 500 in 2020. They're riding high still in 2021. You get Christian Lundgaard, who's a hot shot out of the gate.
Yeah,
in 22. But I mean, last year you had a disastrous first half of the season, and then you bounce back. And then this year, you were completely off the pace pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, it's just been a steady regression, despite their talk about, the plan to, what they call it, the Indy recovery plan or whatever like that.
Which they came through in 2023, but not so much in 2024.
Right.
They took a step back.
It's not there. I'm not saying all the blame needs to go on the drivers. It's just that they lack consistency. The one guy they had, Christian Lundgaard, left because he even said the inconsistent performances in May at the Speedway. So, and I can imagine Hy-Vee being in that same boat. Hey, we want to compete to win Indy 500s, man, not compete to try to make and start the Indianapolis 500. So that's where RLL is. It has a lot of improvement behind the scenes to make. But having the best possible drivers in those seats is important too. That's why you hope that they find a way to get Lundqvist or VK.
And one final thing to get to before we move forward, Michael Andretti penned an open letter basically to fans saying he's stepping back and saying he understands a lot of people are shocked by this decision, but it's a turning of the page. Again, this is what he has to say. I still find it hard to believe, but best of luck. And he's obviously got an opportunity to spend more time with his family and kind of pick and choose his projects. And he has been at it with this team. You go back to 2002 when this team was formed, essentially.
Right. So
that's a long time. And maybe he really is just ready for a break.
I think it was maybe a forced break of some sort, but maybe he's, I think there's a certain spin on it, but also maybe using it as a positive. We'll see. It's going to be different not having him around the track.
Yes.
Every race.
I mean, I assume he'll be around the Indy 500, but beyond that, right, who knows?
He was always the go-to for whoever the pit reporter is for lights races to talk to, because he was like the only IndyCar owner ever in the in pit lane because of his involvement in lights. So they're going to have to find somebody else to interview, but it's going to be interesting. Hopefully it works out well for Michael, but it's going to be different for all of us, let alone in the paddock with him not involved in the day-to-day.
If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us at newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list. It is free to subscribe. You'll get announcements of new episodes, special announcements as well. Plus, you can check out the store. We have t-shirts and stickers there available for you. You can support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier and others for their support. On social media, IndyCar Podcasts on Instagram, on Twitter /X, on Facebook, just search for New Track Record. And as always, you can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, comments, rants, what have you. And download and listen in for free on your favorite podcasting platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, CastBox, Player FM, YouTube Music, Pocket Casts, wherever you find and listen to podcasts, download for free. Okay, mailbag time, and we have quite a bit to dive into this week, just over the past week in general. So we start back with things from last week, and this from Ed Joris on Twitter. Casey to either Gateway or Iowa Speedway is considerably farther than Austin to Arlington, and then adds, for the record, Austin to Arlington is just about the same drive time as Chicago to Road America. So it's not too bad. Xander_Ridge says, hey guys, thanks for keeping me entertained during the Indy off season. I'd have nothing to do otherwise. Just kidding, or am I? I hope you have better things to do. I really do.
Hopefully you're not relying on us.
Anyway, what do you think would happen if Formula One bought IndyCar to use as a North-South American league? Would they get any track they wanted? No, because NASCAR owns like a lot of the oval tracks and other tracks. So then you throw in SMI. So no, it's not as obvious. I mean, they would in theory in terms of doing track rentals, right?
Right.
If they want to pay for that, which IndyCar is not always wanting to pay for that.
Here's what that would look like: is it would basically be F2 plus. And that's perfectly fine. I think that's the thing that people, we don't want to be inferior to Formula One. Well, you're inferior to Formula One. It's just Formula One is worldwide. They would create a series, and maybe it'd just be the league exactly the same. That would just be the landing point for everybody that couldn't make Formula One or was trying to take that next step. How many F2 drivers have made their way over to the United States? So I don't even know how much would change, really.
There might be a few new tracks. You might be an undercard at the F1 event
and
weekends.
Right, maybe Miami, but I just don't know how much would really change. Maybe it's more of a focus on road and street courses and less on ovals? Maybe?
I guess, yeah. I think you'd see ovals become less of a priority outside the Indy 500.
Right, so I don't know. I don't see it happening, but it's an interesting proposal nonetheless.
This from NCAP Team 185. IndyCar fans would not expect Justin to understand us. After all, he's an undercover F1 fan infiltrating an IndyCar podcast. Hashtag F1 sucks.
Yeah, that's me. F1 lifer here.
Elsewhere in the mailbag this week, comments on the track in Arlington with the hype video, and Run_Mark_Run said, by the time 2026 gets here, the track will look like this: a Herman Milk-y layout, and it's basically an oval around Cowboy Stadium, which I thought was pretty funny. And Jay Blasteri said, promoters with deep pockets, 3 major stadiums between Dallas and Fort Worth, 2 amusement parks, home to NTT Data. This could be epic. Also home to Toyota's North American HQ. That is something I've not thought about because they moved.
Interesting.
Because they're in, is it not Irving? Where did they move to?
They moved to Fort Worth?
Not in Fort Worth. Plano, that's where it is, which is up further north, but in the area. That's something I've not thought about that is fascinating to me. That's a great point. Now, does that lead to Toyota joining IndyCar? Not necessarily, but it means you're closer to where the decision makers are at, and that's only going to help.
It doesn't hurt. That is for sure.
You posted a poll, excitement level for the Arlington GP. Nearly 45% of you said big, 23% said mega, 23% said decent, nearly 9% of you said meh.
So close to 70% of people
a lot
are
of optimism.
Big to mega. That's good.
Poet Shevchenko says, I'm optimistic after seeing the track layout, the mix of high-low speed corners and that long straight. Also seeing how it involves both stadiums tells me there are a lot of big people interested in making this a success. Correct. Mom 2X over 2002. Again, I'm admitting I'm skeptical until I see IndyCar and the promoters marketing the race beyond the DFW area in Texas. Don't have much faith it will be as popular as they want. For the record, I live in Texas, deep South Texas, and I want it to succeed but have doubts. Here's the thing. You're not going to market it outside that area. It's just the reality.
Marketing costs a lot of money.
And
money that IndyCar doesn't have. Now, maybe with this relationship, there's more promotions, but I know there's been some vocal voices about, well, they never promoted Texas outside of the area. And it's like, that's kind of the promoter's job, Like you promote in the market. Yeah, and the Metroplex is like over 8 million people. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the Metroplex and say, well, Texas Motor Speedway only promoted in the Metroplex, that's 8 million people. And you had 5,000 show up for the race. Okay. So that's a hell of a lot of people that you're promoting to. So Texas is a big state. It cost a lot of money to marketing promotion. I think there's going to be increased marketing promotion for this race just because. But you could also be Jerry Jones and Roger Penske going, we live in the 4th biggest metroplex in the country behind New York, LA, and Houston or Chicago, I don't know, but you can draw 50,000 people to come to race day out of 8 million just in the Metroplex.
And the other thing is, Dallas Cowboys are not only a statewide franchise, but a nationwide and global franchise. The Rangers are a statewide franchise in terms of popularity.
Correct.
I get that there's the Astros there, but that's Houston specific. The Texas Rangers are popular all across the state and are kind of the state's team. So if you're a fan of either of those teams and you don't have any inkling of this event, I don't know who's failed. I don't know if you failed or if the promoters have failed. Like, I don't know. I think they will do a great job promoting this. I have no doubt.
I think the thing is, too, when you live in South Texas, if you're an IndyCar fan, you know that IndyCar is racing in Texas and where. If you don't know, you're probably out of the market of the people that they're trying to get anyway. How many people are driving from South Texas to Texas Motor Speedway that aren't IndyCar fans? Okay, it's
not very many.
It's different in the market. Okay, if we've heard countless stories of Milwaukee, for example. Guy goes up there is staying with a group of friends, and the hotel manager thinks they're up there for Brewers weekend, and they tell him there's a race, and he had no idea. Right? Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
And that did happen.
Correct. That happened. That's a problem when your market where the race is not being promoted well enough. But other than what race is being promoted statewide that is an IndyCar race other than the 500?
It's probably about it.
And we're talking about smaller states, not the size of freaking Texas, right? So I just don't think it's realistic to look at South Texas as, there was no marketing for the Texas Motor Speedway race, and that's why nobody showed up. It's in a metroplex of 8 million people, and nobody showed up.
When I lived in West Texas, I was an IndyCar fan. It's not like they were marketing it out there at Texas Motor Speedway, but I went in 2014, 15, 16, but I'm an IndyCar fan. They don't need a market to me because I already have awareness of the event, I guess. Correct. Is my point. Other thoughts on the Arlington race announcement? NK Harden says, for anyone hating on this and talking about how they should be at the Oval, you're idiots. Most of the last 15 years saw a terrible on-track product. Every year for the last 20 saw pathetic crowds and zero buzz. People like you are the single biggest problem IndyCar has. So there's the counterpoint.
Very direct.
You look at Texas Motor Speedway, and I can't remember exactly year by year, but how many great events did we have post, 2005?
You can count them on one hand.
Like 2012.
Yeah.
2016 and 2023, right? Or was it 23 or 22?
22.
22.
Right?
Yeah, it would have been 20.
Yeah.
22 when McLaughlin was passed by Newgarden on the last lap. Yeah. So that's it. There might be a few others I'm forgetting, but as far as truly notable races at Texas post 2005, because 2005 was really good, you weren't having that, and the crowds dwindled. Really, 2008 was one of the last really great crowds, and then you have the recession and crowds at racetracks everywhere took a dip.
And it wasn't because of lack of promotion; it was just lack of excitement. Because we have declining attendance at ovals everywhere, and Texas was the biggest one. But just you had a lot of, and they tried everything, right? They tried day races, night races, moving it around the calendar. They tried to, have to draw where you were starting for the second race, right? Remember when they had the twin?
The twin races, in 2011.
Yeah, I was like, they tried everything with that. And we've said it before, that race stayed on the schedule long after it should have, purely because of Eddie Gossage. And what happens as soon as he passes away, TMS goes off the schedule because it was not a money maker for Texas Motor Speedway.
And Texas Motor Speedway, sadly, they're down to one NASCAR event. It won't shock me if that track closes by the end of the decade.
No, it's a good point.
I mean, the land is too valuable now, based on where it's at.
It's like an industrial area, isn't it?
Yes, but they've built up a lot around the speedway as well. This from Lynn _IndyCar. Gentlemen, this event has the possibility of being very huge. Partnership between the Cowboys, Rangers, and IndyCar is amazing. Nice track layout. Did Tony Kottman design it? Yes, he did. He did. Tyler Wong 65, crazy happy. His reply on this. DeGuerra said, street races come and go. Very few that still live on were created by IndyCar. It's a great point. You have Long Beach, you have St. Pete, you have Toronto, and really that's it in terms of events lasting a long time. So that is a concern. This from CJ9. This is great.
What do we got?
Sickos Committee, which is a popular Twitter account, said, this is just a map of me trying to find parking for the Cotton Bowl.
This is hilarious.
So that's a college football related
But
account.
it was the layout. And he was like, this just looks like me trying to drive around and find a parking spot for the Cotton Bowl.
It is chaotic to find parking.
Which is not played at the Cotton Bowl. It is played at AT&T Stadium.
No, well, the Cotton Bowl, yes.
The Cotton Bowl game.
Well, the bowl game, yes.
Correct.
The Cotton Bowl Stadium is still where Texas and Oklahoma play. It's very confusing.
Which will play this weekend in the Red River Shootout. I will always call it the Red River Shootout, by the way.
Yes, correct.
But yes, the Cotton Bowl game is no longer played at the Cotton Bowl Stadium. It is played at AT&T Stadium.
Very confusing. This from K-Stan 5001. Is it an oval? ... Then no. You can't win over everyone.
Nope, they're still praying for ovals. I'm sure they've went to every single oval over the years, and maybe they were the couple people we saw at Phoenix and California over the years.
Yeah, you can't always win on these things.
I mean, look, I get the old a lot of people miss the heyday of the all oval IRL. I get it. Those days are over. I think, quite frankly, you need to be thankful that IndyCar has 5 ovals on the schedule. I mean, who would have thought even a couple years ago they could get to 5 ovals? Hopefully, they hold on to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. You had posted Rahal making an announcement as a joke. Are they selling their charters to Prima?
Kind of a joke.
Jay Blasteri said that would be shocking. And Bauer Racing said, I don't set my alarm for back markers. Ouch. Brutal. And then the promotion with NBC, you said, or 4.5 months before NBC would start promoting it, talking about the Arlington Grand Prix.
16.5 months. I should have said that.
And Karen said, but their NASCAR graphic for the IndyCar race would look much better. Gosh. Yeah, the Nashville race had a NASCAR graphic on rejoins, which is just mind-boggling.
That's
truly mind-boggling.
Tell me you've packed it up and don't care without telling us you packed it up.
And what's weird is it was never, like, the announcers never seemed to, let up, and rightfully so.
Right, they're professional.
But it was
just the production.
The production took a dip.
And maybe they cut, production staff. Who knows? I don't know. They pulled them especially once, NBC was prepping for their NASCAR portion of the schedule. Maybe they took them off, but that's just like egregious errors that shouldn't happen, right?
Yes. I posted a poll question. Who'll be in the third Rahal IndyCar entry in 2025? 40% of you said Rinus VeeKay, nearly 12% Logan Sargent, 30% Stingray Robb, and just over 18% Pietro Fittipaldi. A couple of you replied Yuri Vips. Another said no Vips or Lundqvist. I mean, I'm throwing out names at the time because there was a lot of rumors around Stingray Robb. Obviously, Pietro Fittipaldi is still trying to hold on to that ride. We kind of discussed our guesses there on that. You had posted 2026 IndyCar schedule to-do list. Arlington, check. Mexico, Denver. Talking about the Adam Stern article. Lynn_IndyCar. Looks like Miles has been doing a very good job if he can finish the list. If he finishes that list of just getting those 3, Arlington, Mexico, and Denver, I think that will completely do a 180 on how fans feel about him.
I definitely think so, or at least cancel out the absurdity that he's had the last 4 to 6 months. He's doing a good job. Keep it up.
Mallard_73. Don't forget another super speedway, but management already forgot. Yeah, we would like another super speedway.
We would, but okay, where do you want to go? That how many times we come back here to this thing? Okay, that's nice, but where's this oval that IndyCar is supposed to go that wants IndyCar racing?
And Melvin Mac 0818 said, and an East Coast race too. That is a need. You got to find something.
Let's just be patient, people. We're checking off like the post was. We're checking off one at a time. Everybody said IndyCar needs a Mexico race. They're closing in on that. We have a transformative event on the schedule with Arlington. a Western United States potential race at Denver. Let's just relax, people. Let's just, we can't get us all at once. Let's just. They're
telling everyone to relax,
right?
It's comical.
It's which is definitely a problem. It just calm down. We're heading in the right direction here.
And then P. Gaynor 14 tagged us, the Adam Stern talking about IndyCar quite far along in talks at a new race in Mexico City, and it's the "Hey, I've seen this one" gif from
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. And said it seems familiar because yes, we've heard that how many times on how many international events.
Very true, but
I understand
this
the trepidation.
Seems like it's not South America that they're talking about. It's not China. It's not Dubai. It's Mexico. It's not
Boston.
Yeah, which felt like another world away, trying to make that happen. It just feels more likely, especially now that they were beaten by NASCAR to get to Mexico.
Time for the news and notes as we wrapped up the mailbag. And a couple of Indy Lights announcements. Salvador de Alba Jr. will move from Andretti Cape to the Andretti team for 2025. So congrats to him. Another announcement for Andretti's Loki Hughes will join Andretti Global. Also for Lights, he comes from USF Pro 2000, where he won the 2024 title with Turn 3 Motorsports. So they already filling out their roster. Other news, Jose Maria Lopez, unlikely to make the transition to IndyCar. That was a name that was discussed. It was kind of out of left field. Translated article, thanks to Hickey93 for finding that. So much for that one. Able Motorsports, they're still looking at an IndyCar seat for Jacob Abel. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And they also are still looking at Indy 500 entry as well.
You and I kind of talked about this trading texts. Is effectively the grid is full in terms of full timers. 27.
Well, and it's full in terms of Chevy for the Indy 500 as well. If you see Brian Reinbold run 2 Chevy entries. Now, could they partner with one of those Chevy entries for Brian Reinbold? That's a possibility.
I mean, here's the thing: is some people are going to look at it and be like, "Well," and you talked about this too with the charter system, is it just kind of blocks certain teams out. But I kind of look at it and say that the grid is full. Like, let's say if Pratt Miller wanted to jump in 2026, I mean, you're looking at 27 full time cars now. You can't go to 29. And then let's say Able Motorsports wants 1 car full time, then you're up to 30. I mean, you can't do it. So it's not conducive. The charter system is not conducive to new teams, yet the grid is full anyway. So you kind of don't know, it's kind of, they have no avenue anyway because the grid is full. Now, and I said the radical proposition would be every team only has 2 cars. Where have we seen that? Formula One. Then you could have more teams, right? I don't think that's happening anytime soon, but that's how you would be able to allow more teams. But as it looks like right now, with 11 teams counting Prima and 27 full-time cars, is the grid is full. Sorry, Abel. Sorry, Pratt Miller. You're going to have to wait until either a team downsizes or sells because we're maxed at every race.
They're looking at an Indy 500 entry, which, again, they're going to have to partner with an existing team. One would expect for that.
And a Honda team, right?
Well, they could do Chevy.
Okay.
Because they did Chevy previously, so I would assume they'd like to continue that. And then also 4 cars in Indy Lights. So that's their plans for
how many do they have
next
this year? 2?
2, and then some part-time entries.
Okay.
So
doubling that.
Yeah. Either way, a bigger investment, which is always positive.
You have Ganassi getting Indy Lights. You have more for Abel. I mean, who knows?
HMD, are they going to run 10? I would expect to see them maybe downsize.
Maybe like 7 or 8, you think? So, could we be north of 20 entries?
That seems like a realistic possibility. Other news, Smart Stop is going to partner with Aaron McLaren. They extended that relationship, primary sponsor for 4 races in 2025. You have this statement by Texas Motor Speedway saying, this is great. So Mark Faber, who's the executive vice president and GM at Texas Motor Speedway, said this, talking about the event in Arlington. IndyCar had a rich and storied history at Texas Motor Speedway for nearly 30 years, beginning with the post-race fireworks with A.J. Foyt and Arie Luyendyk after the inaugural race in 1997, and concluding with Joseph Newgarden's spectacular last-lap, last-turn pass for the win in 2023. Well, of course, we all know that happened in 2022. There will always be a special place in our hearts of our race fans for IndyCar at Texas Motor Speedway. IndyCar's move toward more temporary street circuits in 2026 in no way affects our commitment to provide Texas Motor Speedway race fans with the best in motorsports and entertainment opportunities at one of the premier venues in the world. Word salad saying nothing, and you can't even get the race year correct.
Yeah, you couldn't even get the race year correct, and now you're down to one cup race, and then what?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. It's going the way of Kentucky. It's going the way of Chicagoland.
As long as they get that one check from, they're going to have to, it's a year's worth of bills, basically, they're going to have to pay on that one race.
It's too big of a market for NASCAR to leave, but they keep messing with the track to try to get a better product, and it's not working.
Yeah, it's just not working, and it still just has a hell of a lot of seats that aren't filled. It still has what, 100,000 seats?
I think
it had 150 of them.
Yeah, I think they've cut that in half, basically.
Yeah,
it wouldn't shock me.
Still has too many seats.
This is happening tonight, October 10th, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you're listening this afternoon, you could still catch this. But special occasion, the release of A.J. Foyt Survivor Champion Legend, the new book, which we talked about. That'll be the Foyt Wine Vault in Speedway. You can get a signed copy by author Art Garner and A.J. Foyt. So that's pretty cool coming up tonight.
And he looked pretty good in the picture that we saw.
Yes. And I'd be curious to check out that book as well. Other notes, congrats to Chloe Chambers, friend of the podcast. She will drive for Andretti Formula E in the women's test. Also, she's moving to Red Bull, right, for the F1 Academy for next year, I believe. So congrats to her. Speaking of testing, hybrid testing going on. So Nolan Siegel doing his rookie test to pass rookie orientation. And then you have a handful of drivers this afternoon. And then, in fact, Nolan Siegel just completed his Indy 500 ROP for the second time now. And then you have a handful of drivers today on Friday. It's going to be a lot more involved with drivers. It'll be Christian Lundgaard with McLaren, Santino Ferrucci with Foyt, Juncos Hollinger with Connor Daly. That's interesting. Rahal will run Graham Rahal. Dale Coyne Racing will run Stingray Robb. Also, you're going to have Joseph Newgarden with the test, Marcus Ericsson, Alex Palou as well. So, and Ryan Hunter-Reay set to be with Brian Reinbold. So that is fascinating as well. He made it, able to get out of Florida. Prima will not take part, but they have announced, obviously, Callum Ilott, one of their two entries. So my understanding is it's a hybrid test. Also believe there will be timing and scoring for this as well.
And it's supposed to be warm in Indy on Friday, so that's good in terms of, it won't be exactly what the weather is in May, but you always kind of have those fall tests or even the early spring test where it's 63 degrees and you're like, it's just nothing compared to what race day is probably going to be. So this is good because it's the first time that the hybrids will be on track. The added weight of the hybrid system, at least it'll be warm enough to maybe somewhat simulate what will be felt come next May.
And I forgot two other drivers, Alexander Rossi with Ed Carpenter Racing, Elio Castroneves with Meyer Shank Racing. So that makes up the testing lineup. That's for Friday. Abbreviated schedule, no test times for Thursday on day one. A couple other notes to get to before we wrap things up. You had, let's see. In fact, one other note. And it's Roger Penske said, we're not NFL. We're not trying to be Formula One. We think we've got the most sophisticated cars. We have this diversity from the standpoint of the tracks we run on. We need to stay in our lane because this world is big.
I know that people had problems with this quote, particularly the most sophisticated cars comment. I don't know. What do you expect the owner of the IndyCar series to say?
Yeah, he's got to tout his product.
Right.
And also the cars are sophisticated compared to NASCAR, which is their competitor.
Can't compare.
And you could say IMSA, they're maybe on par with, maybe slightly behind in terms of tech.
Right. I don't know. I didn't pick apart this like some other people did. What do you want Roger to say? Yeah, we got to. Yes, he knows the chassis is old. He needs a lot of convincing that the series needs a new one. But for him, he actively says, and I think the part that I took out, IndyCar isn't competing with Formula One. It's not a competitor. So I don't know. I saw a lot on social media about the comment, particularly the sophisticated car. I just kind of chalked it up to promoting your product.
Yeah, he's not supposed to say otherwise, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you want Roger to say, right?
Tweets of the week, we got two of them. First, from Formula Racer 420, in reply to the Rahal announcement, new FBI raid incoming. Whew, brutal.
But hopefully that ends at 1.
And then Alex Plow replying to McLaren F1, who posted a picture of him testing in Austin, running, I think, FP1, because McLaren posted 2 weeks until we're back on track in Austin for FP1. This was a couple days ago. And Plow just said, "Cool pick," in reply, which is great because that's him driving the car.
Yeah, right?
That was very bold and very funny of him to say so. All right, random split error driver of the week time.
All right, so we're going to the mid-2000s, the latter days of the IRL, and going with Tomas Enga.
Yes, Rockstar Energy.
Yes,
Panther
absolutely.
Racing.
So I forgot about this, that he was with Prost in Formula One prior.
I forgot that too.
Yeah, so he participated in the final 3 races of the 2001 Formula season, becoming the first and to date only driver from the Czech Republic to compete in Formula One. He was brought in by Prost as a replacement for Luciano Berti, who was recovering from his track at the previous race in Spa. He left the Prost Grand Prix team before it folded for the 2002 season. He had the sponsor. He said he obtained his Formula One break using the sponsorship from the local Coca-Cola subsidiary, which had also funded the Nordic Racing F3000 team he raced for. So he was able to take that to Prost, and it really kind of galvanized his efforts because, if you bring money at all racing of motors or all level of motorsport, it helps out. But he eventually found himself in the IRL and raced the entire season in 2005, after a couple late season appearances for Patrick Racing in 2004 at Fontana and Texas. He raced the majority of the season with Panther Racing. Was he injured at Nashville?
I believe he was injured. He did not start at Motegi.
Correct.
Was that due to a crash?
I think so. I think it was a crash during quals or practice or something, I want to say. But the majority of the racing he did was in 2005. He almost won at Sonoma, which I don't remember that. But he was close to winning Sonoma and eventually finished 5th in that race, which was his season high. But missed Milwaukee and missed Michigan, I believe, in that 2005 season.
Yes. In fact, I found an article on all of this, and he did return at Kentucky, missed almost a month, fractures to his vertebra. So obviously painful. He was cleared to drive for, listen to the name of this event, the Amber Alert Portal Indy 300. He injured his back in a crash at Nashville on July 16th, this back in 2005.
That must have been like the first year for the Amber Alert. They were trying to promote it.
Must be. Yeah.
So,
I just thought that was a fascinating
random,
name.
Whatever, as long as the check clears. So 2005 was his primary season in IRL. The year after, he was able to did start at Motegi for Chiva Racing and had a 19th place finish. That was his only appearance in the IRL in 2006, and that was it for him. So one Indianapolis 500 start, finished 19th in 2005. After that, he got into some A1 Grand Prix and did some GT1 driving as well. So some sprint racing and stuff like that. Actually did the Dakar Rally a couple years ago, 2021. So still out there on occasion racing. Still 48 years old. Again, a native of Czechoslovakia. And did several 24-hour Le Mans from 2002, 2010. Also drove in 2007 at the ALMS St. Petersburg race.
Go figure.
And was injured while driving the F430 in 2007. Crashed while leading the GT2 class. He was removed under medical supervision and transported to the local medical center. He was later revealed to have suffered a shattered elbow, cracked ribs, partially collapsed lung, and a potentially broken ankle, but not to be in serious danger, like other than that. So did appear in a support race for the St. Pete race.
Also tested positive for a banned substance back in 2012 and was banned from racing for 18 months. He appealed, said the positive test caused by medication he was taking for a chronic cardiovascular condition. His appeal was rejected. So
he won he was third in the Nordic Racing F3000 team in 2002. In 2001. In 2002, he won it and was stripped due to a positive marijuana test. Different day.
Yes.
I don't know if you're getting stripped of your championship at any level if you're using weed. Maybe punished in some way, but not stripped. But anyway, had 17 career IRL starts overall. Had his rookie start in the 2005 Indianapolis 500, finished 19th there. Thomas Inga, this week's random split era driver of the week.
I never would have guessed he really only ran essentially one full season, because it felt like he ran
more,
like
right?
2 or 3.
Yeah, and when I clicked on it, I was like, well, we've heard of this guy, but probably because he's was around for several years when he really wasn't.
He had a notable sponsor at the time in Rockstar Energy with Panther Racing,
right,
and was with a good team at the time as well.
Yeah, but it was mainly just one full-time season with Panther Racing in 2005.
All right, that does it for us. We'll be back next week. If there's anything notable out of the IMS hybrid test, we'll get to that and any other IndyCar news as well. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. This has been another edition of New Track Record Podcast.